Hey everybody, this is Dave, and today we are talking about the Pulp Alley tabletop adventure game. How cool is that? Now, what I'd like to share with you is some information about the fortune cards, and on page 36 of the second edition core rule book here, we have a page that's called Anatomy of a Fortune Card. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to go down through the fortune card. We're going to talk just real briefly about everything that's on the card. What does it mean? So let's get started. Hey, before we get too much further, though, will you take a moment and make sure you hit that like button for us? If you're not a subscriber, you ought to be. Get subscribed to our little channel. And make sure you hit that bell so you get a notification when we upload a new video. Let's take a look at these cards. So the very first thing that appears on the card is the name of the card, and that's pretty much meaningless. Although it might give you an idea about what the card does, it doesn't actually mean a darn thing. So don't get hung up on the name. It doesn't really mean anything. The next thing that's on there is that it tells you when the card can be played. And we're very specific about what that is. Then after the name, it tells you when that card can be played. So let's take a look at the example here. It says before you roll for a brawl. So that's when you're supposed to play that card. When it says something like when an enemy activates, like here is on danger, that means when an enemy activates. And remember, when you're going through your activations in your turn, remember you're supposed to give your opponent an opportunity. When you choose a character that you're going to activate, you should give your opponent an opportunity. Sometimes I even go so far as asking, would you like to play any cards? And then if they choose not to, I continue on with my movement and things like that. Well, once I've already activated the character, and once I've moved, and once I've maybe engaged one of their enemies or something like that, well, it's really too late to then go, oh, wait, I want to throw a danger on you. Well, you're supposed to play that when the enemy activates, not, when they move or when they rush or when they fight. It's very specific about when it's supposed to be played. Now, the next thing that's on the card is the effect. And in this case, it's pretty simple. You gain a +1 bonus. Pretty straightforward there. And then you have a lot of different effects. The enemy encounters a random peril, and on and on. So those are the effects of the card that is being played. Let me make sure I'm not going to miss anything here. Page 36 of the core rulebook if you want to follow along. So after the effect is then some flavor text, and this is completely meaningless as well. Just added there as a little bit of a giggle. Hey, look, what's that behind you? So just a fun little something on the card. Again, there's no rule about it, and it really doesn't mean anything. Then you have the little 3 skulls uh, thing there. And of course, that doesn't mean anything. And then we get to the challenge half of the card. I guess it's important to remember that the fortune cards are really 2 things. They are the fortune effect, which is the top half of the card, and they are the challenge effect, which is the bottom half of the card. And very seldom do those have to do with the other part of the card. So it's almost like it's 2 separate cards. The second half of the card, where it has the challenge portion of the card, is used when you run into a random peril or a plot point or a bystander and making a control check for driving a vehicle and things like that. So whenever you're faced with a challenge, you're normally going to pop the top card off of the deck. It's going to tell you then, what are the skills that I need to roll for this challenge? So beneath the challenge there, it says cunning or might. And you, as the player that's going to be performing the challenge, you're going to pick which skill that you use. This number in the bottom corner over here, this represents the difficulty. So if this was drawn, then you would need to roll 2 successes with cunning or might. This 2 also represents the number of hits you take if you fail a peril challenge. So if this was a peril and you were rolling for cunning or might, if you failed to roll successes, then you would take 2 hits. The same is not true about a plot point. If you fail a plot point, you normally don't suffer the hits. Now the icon in the other corner, the icon in the other corner is simply called the story icon, and I skipped over a few that I probably need to go back to. It's called the story icon, and it's kind of a soft rule because it can mean different things at different times. So if you're doing a bystander or a gadget, or something like that, then you want to watch out for the flame icon. Let me see if we have one out here. There it is. So if you pop this up when you're doing a bystander or a gadget, then that's a bad thing and it becomes a peril instead of just a normal challenge there. So it could actually hurt you then. And then if you're doing like the vehicle rules, then you may draw when you get hits on a vehicle, because you can draw for a critical hit and see if you can get some critical damage. If you're using some of the more advanced rules, then you can use those for hit locations as well. So, and then there are some scenarios that are going to use those cards, and they're going to be expanded on as we continue to work on new rules too. So don't get hung up on the icon, because most of the time it means nothing. Certain situations it means a lot, and so make sure when you're using bystanders, you're going to want to read the rules for bystanders, because if you draw that fire icon, then they become hostile to you and are trying to get away from you, possibly even hurt you. So you got to watch out for that. Let's see the next 2 things, and I bet you there's a lot of folks that might not know all of this stuff. So some of the stuff that's on the bottom of the card, there's just the number of the card. It's a unique identifier, number 206. Now that little 2 right there, that's actually kind of important, because what it represents is the maximum number of these cards that you're supposed to have in your deck. So, you know, there's not a rule about the maximum number or the maximum size that your fortune card can have, your fortune deck can be. I mean, you can have 100 cards in it if you wanted. But there is a rule about the number of this card that can be in your deck. So if you're going to have a big deck, then you're probably going to want to add on some of the extra card packs, like the Phantom packs 1, 2, 3, and 4. The Shadow Legacy will get you some extra fortune cards in there. The Pact of the Agonali, and so on, so that you can get some extra fortune cards if you want a bigger deck. And I think a lot of times, if you're playing with a lot of players, sometimes it's nice to have a bigger deck, so that you're not having to reshuffle as often. Plus, it just adds in a lot more fun cards to use. So that's kind of cool. And then, of course, there's just copyright stuff on there. So if you have any questions about fortune cards, leave them in the comments below. Make sure you hit that like button, get subscribed to our little channel, and stuff like that. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.